Did you know that you can make your own spray starch at home with just one ingredient? It is actually really, really easy to make your own spray starch, and you can save a decent amount of money too by making it yourself. So, I actually made a video about making your own spray starch before, but I'm going to revisit it a little bit because I do want to tell you a few things that I found out about the spray starch that I think you might find helpful. And I'm going to try to answer a few questions in the comments. So, first, I'm going to walk you through the recipe that I like the best. So, this is the spray starch that I like making the best, and I have it in a continuous spray bottle here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So, for this recipe, all you need is 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and some water. That's it. Now, we have some pretty heavy filtration devices on our water and stuff like that. But you may want to use distilled water depending on your water just to make sure you don't get any, fun stuff growing in your starch. We're going to take your 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and add it to your water before the water's heated and mix it together really well so that it doesn't clump. And then you'll want to heat the cornstarch and water mixture, and you'll want to whisk it really well as it is heating up. I usually heat it up for at least a minute, but what I like to do is just watch it until you can really tell it's dissolved and the water starts to get a little clearer. That's when I know it's nice and mixed. And you can actually just mix your cornstarch in with the water and not heat it if you want to, but you'll notice that your cornstarch kind of will separate from the water, and you'll have to shake your bottle up a lot. So I feel like heating it just is a little bit easier. Then you'll just want to let it cool to room temperature, and you can add it to your spray bottle. In the last video I made, I showed you using just a squirt bottle that you can get from Walmart or something like that. Looks kind of like this. I use it for my water still, but I have found that when you spray with this one, it doesn't put a nice mist over your fabric. It kind of sprays out big globs of the starch in different areas. And I feel like these bottles do cost a little bit more, but it's definitely worth it if you can grab one because it puts like a nicer mist over the fabric. A lot of questions I've gotten asked about this particular spray starch is whether or not you can add essential oils or different things to make it smell better. So I have tried doing that, but I find that you have to add so much that you can't until you can really smell it. And I feel like it kind of leaves after a while too. You don't really smell it like you do if you're using Best Press or something like that. So I think you can. You may just want to research the oil that you use and see if it has any reaction to being heated, because I wouldn't want you to ruin your fabric. But I tried it and I wouldn't recommend it. Just I didn't think it got enough of a scent out of it to really make it worth using, if that makes sense. So another question I got asked is if you don't find the spray starch heavy enough, if you don't get a nice heavy feel to the fabric, or if it's too heavy for you, if you can adjust that. And you definitely can. So you could add more cornstarch to the mixture if you need to, or you can add more water to get it so it's not as heavy. It's really nice that this is so easy to customize to the type of feel that you like in your fabric when you're working with it. Now, another recipe I shared in that video was using vodka. So it was just vodka and water. It is such an easy spray starch. For me, I couldn't get it heavy enough, so I kind of stopped using that one after a while. And I didn't like it as much just because I like a little heavier starch feel. Now, a lot of questions I got about that recipe is whether or not you can sub something else for the vodka, whether you can use like a rubbing alcohol or something like that. And to be perfectly honest, I do not know. I am not a chemist. I'm not sure how those reactions will work. So I'm not sure. I did read that the reason the vodka works as a starch the way it does is because Vodka is made from potatoes, and the potato starch is what causes that reaction to make the fabric stiffer. So that's something I read. I don't know. I didn't research it that much just because it's not a recipe that I tend to use very often anymore, just because I have found that I like it to be a little stiffer. So yeah, my go-to would be that I don't think the rubbing alcohol or something like that would work, but you can always mix it up and test it on a small piece of fabric that you're okay with it not working on. All right, so I do want to share a close-up of the spray starch in action just so you can see it. And in the video before, I did get some requests on using it on a little bit more wrinkly of a fabric, so I dug through my scrap bin to get a wrinkly fabric so that you can see it in action a little bit better. All right, so there is my spray starch, and I'm just going to mist over the fabric and get it nice and coated. So now that I have it nice and coated, I am just going to let it dry for a little bit. I don't want to press it when it's really, really saturated, and it could gum up my iron and get it a little bit funky. So I'm going to just let it dry for a little bit. All right, so here's the fabric starch, and I should have let it dry a little bit longer, but I was impatient. So you can kind of see just how stiff it gets, and I really like this depending on how intricate my pieces are and if they're smaller, because it can really help control the fabric a little better. So if I finger press, you can kind of see how nice of a crisp line you get there. And that's how I know that it has a nice stiff fabric feel to it, and that I got a starch mixture that is really what I prefer on some types of piecing that I do. Especially if I'm doing quilt as you go or foundation paper piecing, it is really helpful for that because then you can just finger press and go. So there is the spray starch. So let me know in the comments if you have made your own spray starch at home before, what mixture you like to use. Do you prefer using cornstarch? Do you prefer using vodka? What ratios do you use? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.